Have you ever felt like shadow work keeps you stuck in healing forever? Have you ever felt like the healing process never ends? Like you're always digging, always processing, and never really arriving anywhere new? I hear this a lot, and honestly, I felt this way many times. But that's because there are two things. One, we're not fully integrating the wound. And two, sometimes it takes many times to move through deeper wounds. But we must be careful that it does not become a shadow work trap where your wounds become an endless loop of healing. And that only happens when we're not going deep enough. And actually, it happens all the time. But here's what I've learned, and what I want to share with you today is that shadow work isn't about staying stuck in the pain. And when it's done deeply and honestly, it leads to real integration and even more powerfully, embodiment, which is really the ultimate goal of shadow work. Majority of us do not get to the point of embodiment because we simply don't stick with practice long enough, or are we willing to go deep enough? But ultimately, this is what we're aiming for. So when shadow work is done deeply and honestly, it leads to real integration and ultimately embodiment, which is the deepest goal of shadow work. And this is when shadow work becomes soul work, because now we're integrating into our intuition, our authentic self, and aligning in that part of ourselves that has been overshadowed by the shadow, which is identified with the personality, the ego. So, in order to reveal those layers or dig deep through those layers, shadow work is essential. And if we want to break this loop, we have to start to notice what we're doing automatically, because we are repeating the cycle of the same patterns over and over again. And this is because we are holding on to our unconscious wounded patterns that keep us repeating the same lessons. But in order to realize that, we have to be more conscious of the choices that we're making. We have to be more present. And then we also have to align in our awareness, the part of us that is at peace. So allow me to introduce myself. Welcome to Starwell Astrology. My name is Sharrie, and I'm a Western tropical astrologer with a very, very special interest in shadow work. Those of you who have subscribed to my channel and have listened to my work, you know that almost everything that I do, I trace back to shadow work. Even astrology, even though I have a lot of interest in esotericism and astrotheology, I truly believe that they all align in shadow work. So thank you for watching. Also, I want to mention that I am offering a free 10-minute mini reading for a limited time only, and you can ask me to look at either one astrology question, it can be about anything, or the other option is to request a soul wound insight that you'd like to get more clarity on. And these are short reflections, they're not full sessions, and they're designed to give you one clear piece of guidance you can take with you. Now, if any of that should resonate with you, or if you find the reading useful and you want to go deeper, especially if you've discovered what your core wound is, then I also offer a free shadow work workshop every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Please pay attention to Eastern Standard Time. We meet weekly and we can explore these themes more deeply as a group. So if you are interested, feel free to contact me at starwellastro@gmail.com, and I will tell you how to join, and I'll also tell you what information I'll require if you are interested in the free 10-minute reading. So many believe shadow work is endless because they never go deep enough to reach integration, let alone full embodiment of our wounds. And to integrate our emotional wounds means that we are ready to acknowledge they exist first in order to transform them through healing. Our wounds must be acknowledged and then faced for healing. So to embody emotional wounds means that we're not just aware of them in thought, but you let them live in your body long enough to be witnessed, felt, and transformed. And it entails full acknowledgement. Once you've witnessed your emotional wound, it must be acknowledged. It cannot be bypassed, and you cannot minimize it, and you can't use excuses to wish it away, and most of us do. So saying inwardly, this pain is real and it is felt here, allows us to bring awareness to it. The next thing about it's felt here, meaning where in the body do we feel this? Is this in the stomach? Is it in our chest? Do our solar plexus feel tight, meaning our gut center? And also, is our hand shaking? All these are little symptoms about where our emotional wound is being held in the body. Remember, the body is the temple. So our wounds must be honored in our temple. Another thing we tend to do is distort our emotional truth. Allowing raw feelings like grief, shame, fear, rage without masking them is important. And one of the ways I have always said to allow ourselves initially to start to recognize what it is that we're truly feeling is to either speak it out loud to yourself, it doesn't have to be with anyone else, or to write about it, journal. And this journaling needs to be done from a place where you're not censoring yourself. You just allow yourself to put out what you need to and say what you need to, so that way you get it out of your mind and on paper, and maybe can recognize some of the emotions that keep repeating themselves based on what you're writing. And the other thing to remember is that there's no wrong way to feel. So a feeling is just a feeling. It's what we do with the feeling. If we identify with it completely, then it can bring harm to us and ourselves, and therefore we're reactively living based on these feelings that automatically cause us to make choices that are from a wounded place. But a feeling is really just a feeling, so there's really no wrong way to feel. So to interact with what we feel, we must witness our true feelings. And then we must hold this emotional wound in our awareness with compassion, forgiveness, and patience until it shifts. Then it is no longer an unconscious driver, and it becomes a conscious part of our wholeness, meaning that it's integrated into being a true part of us, so that the emotional wound is no longer lurking in the shadows, unconsciously causing us to recreate from it. So embodying what we feel allows the emotion to shift, and that's the next stage. Over time, the body no longer carries the same reactive charge. So once the wound is integrated, in other words, we know where we feel this. We're aware of what the feeling is. We know what part of the body we're feeling it. We actually have a name for what we're feeling. Even if we don't have a name, we just know that there's a feeling or a deep heaviness lurking somewhere in the shadows that is now conscious instead of unconscious. So at this point, embodying what we feel allows the emotions to shift over time. The body no longer carries the same reactive charge, and the wound becomes embodied wisdom. In other words, it's like a real gauge and guidance that is within us that helps us to make choices that are more aligned in what's true and right for us. And this is when we're starting to live from the body's intuition. So why does it matter? Without integration and embodiment, our wounds will stay as a mental concept. And this is what keeps us stuck in the loop. This is what makes it just an idea, a concept that we can talk about, and we can analyze it and explain it away and talk about the story around it, but it never gets integrated, much less embodied. So integration means that we have faced and accepted the wound, meaning the shadow part of ourselves, the part of us that's fragmented. It's no longer exiled or unconscious. It's included as a part of you, your wholeness. For example, feeling and owning your shame without denying it, letting it become part of your truth, is how you integrate these wounds. So integration is the inner completion of the shadow work. And that's because, as I said, there's no wrong way to feel, and we're dualistic in every way. We're masculine and feminine energy, and we have polar opposites in our whole reality, including within us. So if there's going to be a light side or a positive side, there's going to be a dark side and a negative side. So allowing this to exist within us is how we allow it to become integrated, for it to eventually get transformed into embodiment. Now, this is the most advanced layer of shadow work. And many don't get to this point because shadow work is not exactly easy, pleasant work that most of us want to do. We avoid it like the plague. So getting to the point of integration is huge, but embodiment is a whole nother level. But that is true shadow work. You get to the point where the wound no longer rules from the shadow. It becomes part of your power, your humility, and your compassion. And that's huge. Now, embodiment is when the inner integration shows up in how you live, breathe, and move in the world. And it's when your choices, your relationships, and your presence naturally carry the truth you've integrated. In other words, you're more authentic. You know what you feel, you own what you feel, and you make a choice based on that emotional truth. What feels right for you, it does not come from hurting anyone, rejecting anyone. It just comes from what feels true for you. After integrating shame, for example, you not only accept it inwardly, but you no longer allow it to affect your own confidence, your own openness, and your own compassion, because you see it clearly as the wound that in the past may have affected your choices. So you're no longer anchored in that wound of shame because now you see it for what it is. And you can move through it unrestricted. Now, you don't hear me saying that it's gone necessarily. Yes, sometimes some wounds do go, but even if they don't leave, for example, shame is embedded so deeply that you feel that it exists within you, even after you have done many years of shadow work. You still allow it to be there, but it no longer has the say on what you do. It no longer taints your choices. Instead, you see it for what it is, and you still move through it and make the higher choice that aligns with what you know is right for you. Until you do that, shame will rule your choices, whether you choose to agree with me or not. So ultimately, embodiment is integration made visible in form. I can say that again. Embodiment is integration made visible in form. In other words, we integrate the shame, and when it becomes embodied, we can live through that shame and make it visible in the world, not from shame, but through shame, we know ourselves completely as wholeness. We make choices that are not aligned in the wound of the shame, but being liberated from the shame. So shadow work is ongoing, yes, but it's not a cycle of suffering as most might think it is, because if you're able to move through your wounds, then you're no longer stuck in the painful loop that recreates the same experiences over and over again in different ways. So space must be created between the emotional wound and the one who perceives the wound through a story or experience that they feel identified with. And this is what self-witnessing will allow us to do, because we get to see that we are the perceiver of the wound through a story or experience that we keep repeating because we feel identified with it. And this is the first stage of shadow work, because if you start to practice self-witnessing, because you're acknowledging and facing the feeling, it creates space between you as the observer of yourself experiencing your wound. So there's less identifications with you and your wound. So to allow ourselves to feel fully without distortions is also the next process. And this is why witnessing ourselves and then creating the space to free ourselves from our identifications allows us to see what we feel as our emotional truth without distortions. It's the story that we tell ourselves that cause the distortion to what we're feeling. And this happens all the time. For example, the feeling of shame a lot of times is covered by another emotion on top because most of us don't want to feel our shame. So instead of feeling ashamed, we will feel resentful. And it's hard enough to face resentment, much less to see that it's linked to shame. But as we do the shadow work, and like I said, unless you go deeper and deeper into this work, you will stay on the surface and keep trying to heal the same wound because you simply haven't gone deep enough through the distortions to find what is emotionally true, to then accept it and see that it is a part of you. It's not you, it's just a fragmented part of your identity because now it's a wound that you feel identified with. And by allowing yourself to see this, you then make the space to integrate it in a way that it's part of you because now it's stuck somewhere in the body, it's lodged there your whole life. You feel how that it's always affecting your choices, the things that you're doing. It affects how you present yourself in the world. But once it becomes embodied, it no longer stops you. It is no longer a block. It's something that you can move through. So that's the process of shadow work. And it's a lot, but once you start to do these steps, one step gives way to the other, as long as you're willing to stay open to each step and take them as they are revealed. So it's a great practice to start to witness ourselves first, and then also see how we're living in the mind that keeps repeating the loop. And that's where you get stuck because it will bring up the pain, and then you re-identify with the pain, and then you tell yourself the story, and then the pain comes back up and you live there. But if you're doing real shadow work and you're able to witness yourself, you'll see that you're telling yourself the story, and you see the space between you, the one who's witnessing, and the story you're telling yourself that's triggering the feeling. When you get to that feeling, you go deeper than just that feeling. You try to see without using your intellect. Instead, you allow your intuition to give you guidance on what that feeling is. You feel it in your body. You allow that to speak to you. And once you get through that feeling, it's no longer distorting what is true, your emotional truth. When you get to that emotional truth, you allow it to live in you because then you're integrating it. You're realizing that, okay, this is a wounded shadow aspect that is a part of me that has lived in me my whole life. Now, instead of rejecting it, trying to fix it, because then now you're doing self-improvement. We're just doing shadow work, which is really soul work. So if you allow that integration to happen, then it becomes embodied and we can move through the emotion rather than push it away, go around it, over it, under it. We go through it. When you go through it, it becomes a part of you that is no longer blocking, stopping, reshaping, distorting. Instead, it's just there to show you what you're not and what you're ready to be, and also to show you what is authentic to who you are at a soul level, what is true to your core essence. And you start to express yourself from that space instead of that wounded, stuck feeling that you're denying within yourself. So if you start to do this work as it is meant to be done, then you really do get some true healing. There becomes a period of time where you get a breakthrough that allows you to stabilize the emotion in your body. And it allows you to anchor into wholeness, meaning who you are as a soul. But unless you move through these wounds, you cannot process and transform to integrate our true feelings for it to eventually become embodied. It just can't happen. You can't jump from feeling your wounds to embodiment. It's a process. And it's actually an alchemical process, if I'm really being honest, but I don't want to scare you off, so I won't say that, but that's exactly what it is. But if we're really doing shadow work and we want to go deep enough, this is the way. So the embodiment of our emotional truth is how we fully heal our wounds, and it breaks the cycle that has kept us stuck in our wounds forever. So we're able to anchor in our body through the healing process, and we're no longer stuck in the unconscious cycle of resisting, avoiding, rejecting what we feel. Everything is allowed. What we feel is what we feel, and we bring it into the body, and we take it out of the mind because the mind loves to play with it. Instead, we put it in the body. We feel what we truly feel there. And this is how we get to release the unconscious triggers that have been running the show all along. This is your liberation. This is what transformation is. This is what true psycho-spiritual alchemy is. There's no other way. This is just what it is. Now, I'm not saying that it's easy, but this is the process. Now, if you are interested in going deeper into your own wounds and starting to excavate this part of yourself that has been unprocessed, unconscious, repressed, rejected, then a place to start, if you have not already, is through my free shadow work offered every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. If you're interested in joining me, just send an email to starwellastro@gmail.com. But this is exactly the work that we do there, depending on where you are at and how far or how deep you're ready to go. Also, I want to extend an offer of a 10-minute free reading of one question, or if you'd like to explore one of your deep core wounds, just send me an email to starwellastro@gmail.com. So thank you for joining me, and I hope you'll join me next time. And if you have not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button or like this video if you have found it helpful. Thank you and goodbye.